Are you curious about the next era of healthcare and what might be possible in the future for healing as science, technology, and spirituality come together? Welcome to C60 Health Connections, where we meet with leading experts in the health and wellness space. On today's show, we are going to discuss energy, frequency, vibration, and magnetics with Dr. Jason Loken. If you are interested in transforming your beliefs around healing and are interested in embracing your limitless potential as a human being, you do not want to miss today's conversation. Dr. Jason Loken is with us today. He brings over 20 years experience in natural healthcare. His background includes integrative medicine, naturopathic medicine, osteopathy, applied kinesiology, and the Walsh Mental Health Approach. He is an ND, a DO, MP, and a PhD candidate who founded the Center for Integrative Medicine. He has also published 2 books, Letters That Move the World, Intentional Acts of Gratitude, and Understanding Knowing, Unlocking Your Path to Optimal Health. He also created the Inspire Health podcast, a place for game changers, visionaries, and inspirational leaders to come together and share their wisdom with you on all things health, wellness, mind, body, spirit, and spirituality. My name is Jessica McNaughton, and I am the Chief Operating Officer at C60 Purple Power. I'm a business executive with years of experience in corporate America. And for more than 20 years, I've been exploring various modalities in health, wellness, and spirituality. Also on today's show, we have my friend, Ken Swartz. Ken is a research scientist, a biogeochemist, and the founder and chief science officer at C60 Purple Power. Now, before we get started, these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Any products or topics discussed today are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. So with that, let's get started. Jason, so good to see you. Ken, great to see you as well.
Great to see you guys too.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So let's just dive right in and get right to the basics. So, Jason, I'm just curious for our listeners. I want to do a little definition of these topics because they're fairly broad, and I want to try to break them down to the basics. So, for the context of today's conversation, help me define energy, frequency, vibration, and magnetics, please.
Well, in this series that we're doing right now, which is all looking at in the Inspire Health podcast, a lot of times we'll do these different series just to round out a topic. And just for the viewers, this series is all on energy, frequency, vibration, magnetics, this whole sort of phenomenon, because it seems to me that we're needing to move to this way of looking at the world in many ways. And a lot of times this stuff precedes what we tend to look at from just a straight physical biochemical standpoint. So Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, then think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So I ask actually each one of the guests that same question that you just asked me, and each guest gives a slightly different answer to all of that, sort of from their perspective. So I think that you've got some really basic definitions of it, and then you've got some really expanded definitions of what that means. And each guest has their own flavor and nuances around that, which I think are really important to sort of hear how they describe it. I mean, in general, I think of energy as our ability to do work. So everybody wants more energy, and we don't generally feel as good when we have less energy. What we find is that energy is also very related to things like frequency, for example. Even when we look at certain equations, like you look at something like Planck's equation for energy of a photon, energy is equal to Planck's constant times light frequency. So as frequency changes or goes up, we actually make more energy. Frequency is just sort of the number of oscillations, more or less. So as there's more number of oscillations, we get more energy. We interviewed the Goldmans, which Andy and Jonathan Goldman, they've been sound healers for a long time. And he said, anytime anything is in a state of movement, there's a vibration to it. And they specifically related back to sound and to music and how these create different slightly changes in vibrations. And magnetics, we haven't even gotten into too much yet in the conversation. That's kind of for a guest that's going to be coming up. And what I'm really curious about it for that conversation is going to be around how do the magnetics of the planet and the solar system impact us directly? And are they changing? And from what we understand is they are changing, and they are potentially playing a role in changing even our physiology and having an impact on our DNA, which I think is going to be really exciting to learn more about.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really curious about magnetics too. I know very little about the topic, and a couple years ago, Ken, through a friend of his, gifted me with a magnet to put under my bed to help me with sleeping. So I kind of want to talk about that in a little bit. But I know that there's really amazing potential health benefits by using magnets. And so I definitely want to dial into that. So let's just, I want to keep this kind of really basic initially. So why do you think understanding your personal energy is so important for us right now?
So when you say personal energy, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, like how, like our basic rhythms from our body, the amount of energy that we have, the energetic field around us. Why is it, if somebody was going to start to explore this as a topic and get in tune and in touch with their own personal energy, why might that be important?
I think of, first, I think if people even start to slow down to pay attention to what's going in their body, period, that's a really good starting place. Because I think in many ways, we're very disconnected from the body, even though for the most part, this era of medicine that's been so focused on right now is very physical based, but it's actually very far removed from being actually in the body and present of what's going on in the body. When we start to become really aware of what's going on in the body, one of the things I'll do in the book, Understanding to Knowing, one of the things that we talk about is even just a tracking sheet so that people actually take time at the end of the day to just review a number of basics, like what was my energy level like? How was my sleep? How were my bowel movements? Going through some of these things just to stop and check in to see how we're doing. I think it's the first step in order to make any kind of changes in yourself, and even to pay attention to see if you're actually happy and content with where you currently are. If we don't stop to kind of pay attention, we're just on this rat race until things completely break down. So I think slowing down to pay attention to where we're at, how we're feeling, what's our emotional status like, those things all, what you'll find is that those things all directly affect our electromagnetic field that goes off of us and extends into the world around us. There's a very real electromagnetic field that extends off the heart, at least 8 feet that we can detect through instrumentation, that interacts with those around us. And it also is directly affected by the planet, and we also affect the planet. This is all research that's been done through the Heart Math Institute. So these things may not be visible, and they may be falling into the areas of sort of subtle energy, but they're very real and they impact us significantly. So I think paying attention to, even on a base level, what things make your energy go up, what things make you feel good, what things make your energy crash, what things make you feel bad, and then actually paying attention to those things and using that as information to then make different choices. I think that's a great starting place for everybody.
I think that's great. One thing I've been curious about over the last year and a half, as we've been all going through this weird time on the planet, and just for context, today is October 29th, 2021. I'm glad that you brought up the point about the heart math research around the magnetic field from our heart, and that it's 8 feet, because I've been curious what's actually impacted in terms of our connection with other people and our feeling of just love by having to have this, you must stay 6 feet away. We need all this space, even, from friends and family. I mean, in the general public, you might think that could be a nice thing, but like with your friends and family, you certainly want to be much closer than that. I'm wondering if you have any insight or feedback on that particular topic and what we might be potentially dealing with because we have been physically separated much more so than ever before in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's, well, from just when if you just kind of go back and think, outside of what we're told and rules and regulations and all these types of things, if you just go back to being a human being, it's natural for us to be social creatures. So it's very unnatural to be separate, particularly from loved ones, right?
Yeah.
No different than, say, an animal kingdom. I mean, you see like, pups, they all lie on top of each other when they're going to sleep. All animals do. I mean, that's what it looks like in our bedroom when we go to bed with my 4 and 5-year-olds. Like, everybody's all kind of piled up on top of each other. I think that when we have that separation, I mean, you got to remember that these fields interact with those fields around us. So if we are around a negative field, we may entrain to that. If we're not able to stay within a certain frequency and a certain vibration ourselves, we may entrain down to that. It's like, think about if you've been on a subway, and then someone steps into the subway that's really dodgy, and you can feel the whole energy just kind of crash for a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're around someone that's got a very loving, harmonious field, you, in the presence of that, you feel like you entrain upwards, right? You feel better, you feel relaxed. You get a ton of different changes, oxytocin, all these different things all start to kind of shift biochemically in the body when you're around that. When you're not able to be around those people, you're not able to enjoy the benefits of that entrainment. So a lot of times, and when people are alone, I mean, what are they entraining to? Probably what's on the screen in front of them.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ken, do you want to add anything here to this topic about just maybe the potential impact that we might be going through by having this actual physical space between all of us?
Oh yeah, that's pretty much, that's well known. I mean, people will actually synchronize their heartbeats when they're right next to each other. And you got to wonder, how does that happen? But it does. And so if we see that in, the base, something so easily seen, you have to imagine all the different, more subtle things that are going on there. Because we can see synchronization with the heart, but there could be a whole lot. There's also some evidence of synchronization with the brain. So two people are next to each other, and their heart and their brain, and they're kind of, their bodies synchronized together. So it's very, very important. And it is, and that's one of the things about, toxic environment. Some people can be toxic people. And so being with good, positive people is a really important thing, and avoiding the bad, negative people is a really important thing to maintaining health.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I spent years in corporate America, like I mentioned earlier, and oftentimes I was working in very toxic environments, and it's much nicer now to have control over my own destiny and my own environment. So I think you've made a good point there. So Jason, talk to me a little bit about vibration. What are some ways? First of all, maybe we should define vibration again, and then what are some ways that people could raise their vibration or support having a really healthy vibration? And Ken, I'm going to ask you a similar question in a minute.
A lot of times these get kind of overlap when I'm talking to the different guests. They don't always separate specifically in the conversations. We're having too much separation between frequency and vibration. Sometimes I almost find that they use the terms kind of interchangeably a little bit, depending on what they're talking about. Even the idea when you think of like high frequency or, positive vibrations or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. A lot of times what I find that it ties back to in many ways is literally almost states of consciousness and what it feels like in your body. So, I mean, technically vibrations are just an oscillation. So when you're looking at it from something like a sound healing perspective, you might use different vibrations and different frequencies to influence the body in different ways. And even that is not quite so simplistic. It seems to be more to it that the Goldmans talked about, which I can get into in a little bit here. But a lot of times across the board, when they're talking about frequency and vibration, they very much bring them together with sort of a state of consciousness. So I think of it like this. the way that it was described that I think makes a lot of sense is they use the analogy water. So RJ said, think about it like water. When water is frozen, when it's ice, right? It's got low potential energy. Things are moving more slowly. They actually start to get stuck together. They're not vibrating as fast. And everything sticks to ice. You put something to it and it sticks to it. And his thing was talking a lot about how we need to be very detached. We need to really learn to be less attached to so many things. And that was a big part of him healing from chest down paralysis, was letting go to all attachments. So from his perspective, he said, water, when it's ice, everything slows down. It's got less movement, less frequency. It's low frequency, low movement, low vibration, low energy, and everything gets stuck to it. The more that frequency goes up, the vibrations, they move a little faster. They start to separate from each other. You can let go of things a lot easier. And those tend to correlate with different feeling states. So then we move out of things that I would say anything like non-beneficial long-term emotional states. That might be things like anger, fear, shame, guilt, apathy. These types of things would tie into being in these lower vibrational states, these lower frequencies, lower energy. And they fit very much with sort of when we think about things from consciousness, because consciousness essentially is a field. And you're going to have a more contracted field that's going to have less potential possibilities within that field. As you move up in frequency and you move up in these different feeling states, the field gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You think of something from if someone's in a fear state and then all of a sudden they move into a state of, say, courage or a state of like love, as a massive, powerful field. And because it's moving at a much higher frequency, things are moving faster. There's a ton more energy to actually work, to make changes in your life. And you think about the possibilities that you would be open to in a state of courage or love, as opposed to in a state of fear. This is how you make dramatic changes in your life. So if we're stuck down in these lower vibrational, lower frequency states, that's a small field of consciousness where you don't have access to a lot of the infinite potentials available to us. As we move up, we get into more and more expansive fields that allow us, it's almost like sometimes those options might have always been there, but we never saw them because we weren't privy to seeing it because we were in a different field. It's like all of a sudden that wonderful partner could have been right there, but you can't see it because you're stuck in this little box. Once you get out of that box and into a bigger field, all of a sudden there's a lot more options available to you. And they will also come in.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful reminder. Because we've all been inundated with this fear. And Ken, you often refer to this as fear porn, the stuff that's on the TV. And you talk about that a lot. And Jason, I just absolutely love what you just said about we are really shutting down our ability to connect to the potential that's available for us because we're in fear and we're not being courageous and we're not filling our field with love. So Ken, let's talk a little bit about things that people can do naturally to help increase their vibration.
Well, it's as before, the mind is sort of like a radio receiver, but not just the mind, but the soul, whatever the whole essence of the being is. And so you kind of have, it's like a radio receiver, and you just can tune in to the frequencies of the vibration, whatever you call that is beneficial. And so part of that, there's things like meditation, and also, positive thinking and being with, loving, helping people. And that's, there's that. And then there's things to avoid, of course, which is like television. I mean, the number one thing that people can do to improve their mental and spiritual outlook is to simply stop watching television. And part of it is, of course, the negative message that comes out. I mean, look at the evening news. It's like I said, fear porn. But also there's subliminals and other more esoteric or spiritual things that get embedded in that whole energy that's coming off the screen. And so it's really important, like, to get that out of it. And also the same with music. If you listen to negative, disharmonic music, the essence of that and the people that produce it, you'll kind of tune in to what that is, and that can you can either bring yourself down or you can raise yourself up. So it's a choice. It's, what to avoid, but also what to go for. And that's a personal choice, but you have to actually put some effort into it. You just can't, and it takes a lot. I mean, turning that television off forever is a big thing, but it's one step on your way to attaining a higher spiritual essence and a happier life.
Mm-hmm. Jason, can you talk to us a little bit about, the benefit of consuming natural, healthy, organic foods, being out in nature, getting plenty of, clean water and hydration in your system to support an increase in your vibration and to actually be able to be more receptive and open to, our greater potential?
Yeah, it's a lot of times when people get into thinking about things from energy, frequency, vibration, this perspective, you can then very quickly almost forget about the physical body, but you still can't forget about the physical body. I mean, it is the vessel that we are here with. And even though we may not be straight physical beings, we are still having a very physical experience. And we do need to take care of the physical body. And from an energy frequency perspective, it is still the container that has to house all of that. And to many parts, you can actually hold more. You can actually move through higher states of consciousness and stuff when you have a much stronger physical vessel to allow it. And what I'm also really fascinated about is because it seems that we are literally going through some physiological upgrading at this time. When you start to get into sort of the metaphysics of what's potentially happening right now, it's exciting because it does seem like there is some very real changes that are happening as a human species, which I think is fascinating. And within that, I often go back to one of my main teachers was Dr. David Hawkins, and he was more of a spiritual teacher. He used to be a medical doctor and psychiatrist and brilliant, brilliant teacher, but he developed this scale of consciousness. And he said that from a human perspective, we are basically able to get up to a level of 1,000, which would be what would be considered enlightenment. Very rare level for people to attain. But he said the physical body cannot go beyond that because of the nervous system, where he would say things like, like an archangel or something along these lines might calibrate a level of 10,000, unfathomable to what that experience would be like for us. But because of the physical body, we might be capping off at about 1,000. But I think that right now, given what's happening, I have a feeling that we are going to open the doors to extend beyond what those original perceived limitations were. So I think it's an exciting time to see what's going to be possible. So you might even find as you start to feel things shift within your body. When you move to different states of consciousness, when you go through things that change frequency and vibration, these subtle energies, you may even find that naturally you're just drawn to things in a different way. My wife was never much of a water drinker, and all of a sudden she got crazy drinking water, kind of about a year ago. And she'd laugh at me because I'd be going to the bathroom all the time and she could be like a camel. And then all of a sudden it's like, she's going pee all the time. And I'm like, there you go. But we also actually found some right runoff water that we would then take like mountain runoff water and then take and run it through the Berkey and sort of have this really clean water. But, we would get cravings for it. And from the more I understand too, when we talk about frequency and vibration, like everything is, and there's this even concept of geometric shapes and light codes and all of these different things. When you go and spend time in nature, you are being inundated by information that you're not even aware of. And just by being in the presence of beauty, by being in the presence of nature, by being in the presence of these different geometrical patterns, there's information going in and there's things getting turned on. DNA is receiving messages and information in different ways. And I almost implore everybody, if you can, like what Kenneth said, first get off of the stuff that's not serving you. It's no different than, getting yourself away from junk food, junk lighting, all of these types of things. Get the stuff that's not working for you out of your system and then go immerse yourself in stuff that's healthy. Healthy organic eating as much as you can. Clean, fresh water, real basics. Get rid of surrounding yourself by stuff that makes you feel sad, unhappy, fearful. When we first came to all of this stuff, we haven't had a TV for about a decade, but we literally just went and spent probably 4 months with literally almost no contact to too much and just spent a lot of time in nature. We go for long walks in the forest. We go down by the water. And what you will find is you get a different level of clarity and you get a different level of inner knowing because you tap into a sense of truth that goes well beyond what the thinking mind is capable of finding.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think everything that you just said was really profound, and I'm so glad you shared that. So I want to talk about things that, without getting us kicked off of YouTube, I'd like to talk about different ways that you guys suspect we might be manipulated, that our vibration, that our energy might be manipulated, because I'd like to use this opportunity to help people clue in. And you guys have talked about the TV and the fear porn. But Jason, what, like, in terms of the energy field and our vibration or our frequency, what other technologies do you think are being used today that could be potentially affecting our vibration and putting us more into that constant fear state?
It's one of those questions where I think really important, because I honestly believe there is so much and well beyond what we're even aware of that's probably going on. I mean, in one of our series, we talked to a number of people that have been, that have actually been through things like MK Ultra mind control and have gotten out of it. And I mean, we've talked to real life people that have actually experienced some of these different things. So it's definitely real. There's definitely stuff out there. And from their perspective, they see it very clearly now where it is everywhere. So again, if you can open up to the idea that we are actually affected by these subtle energies, right? I mean, you can create a certain vibration that can shatter glass. There's been so many different things that have been done to show the power of some of these subtle energies. So to think that they have no effect on you is really naive. We can use them for mass benefits, just like you can shine a specific laser light or play specific sounds and have dramatic health benefits. You can absolutely do that on the other end. I think one of the people that really showed this early on, that I think was in a way that was very visible, was when you just looked at some of the work that Dr. Emoto did with the water crystals.
Yeah.
I mean, that was I remember when I first saw that, and it resonated with me as being really incredibly important work, right? And for a lot of other people, they just kind of like, oh, that's interesting, what on. But I remember at the time thinking, like, this is profound. Like, do you guys get what this is doing? Even if you just see it from a visible perspective like that. I mean, it showed very, very quickly how what we see, what we hear, what people even think, right, has an impact on water. I mean, we're pretty much almost all water, right? I mean, as much as we say we're 70% by when you look at the actual size of water, I think Dr. Pollock said we're actually over 99% water when you look at it by size. So, I mean, it is going to have a dramatic impact on us. Now, we don't know to the degree of all of that, but if I just sort of get an idea, does it look right to me to have this really beautiful geometric shape or this really chaotic looking shape? Something about that resonates as being true to me. So, I mean, you look at all the different ways that you can be inundated with. I think the first thing is, and probably one of the ways that you have, and this is why I talked at the beginning, it's so important to get back in the body, right? Because I think a lot of times we are so disconnected from the body, and the body is our way of discerning a lot of times what is truthful, what's not truthful, what feels right, what doesn't feel right, what works, what doesn't work. And then we don't stay there. We usually go here and kind of rationalize our way, oh, that can't be true or whatever, and we ignore the body. But I think if people get away from all of it first, like they shut off, they do a media break, they really are careful with even cell phone devices and stuff like that. They shut them right off. They put them somewhere separate at night. They turn off their router, like really do some of these things for a while and get out of it, because it's hard for people to understand what feels different when you're still in the middle of all of it. You really do sometimes have to take a break. No different than a detox. Someone can say, oh, gluten's fine. I eat gluten all the time and it doesn't cause me any troubles at all. And then you get people to do a detoxification process for a while or an elimination diet for a little while. And they go from being totally out of balance to getting a whole new baseline where they should be. And then they actually interact with that food again. And it's like, whoa, I had no idea that it was doing that to my body, because what they thought was normal was completely abnormal now. And so once they got a new baseline from getting out of it for a while and then re-expose themselves, and then trust what it feels like when you actually get re-exposed, that's really, really valuable information. So whether it's coming from your TV, whether it's coming from cell towers, whether it's coming from routers, I mean, I've seen information that shows it comes from all sorts of different places. So
yeah, I think you're just mentioning the cell phone. I know a lot of people who use their cell phone as an alarm clock. So they go to bed and they look at it right before they go to bed, and then they sleep with it on their nightstand. And I try to tell all my friends and family, like, hey, it's one thing if you really want to use it as an alarm clock, but there's no reason why you can't put it in the other room, and why you can't put it on airplane mode. The alarm will still go off, but you don't need to have that, your 5G cell phone blasting at you all night while you're trying to sleep. Like, you just don't need to do that. So Ken, what about you? In what ways, and please don't get us kicked off of YouTube. What ways do you think that people may be being manipulated right now that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, energies, positive and negative, could be entrained into things. And of course, we see the Dr. Emoto with that. They put love on a water bottle, and then the hate on the other one. They take the love and they put it in like a little drop of water, then they freeze it. And that would make these really complex crystals. And the hate one would just have this kind of ugly looking, not very defined crystal. And that was just with, a written word, or the other ones where the people fought it. So one of the things people can do, for instance, is you can thank or bless your food before you eat it, or the waters before you. And that kind of puts the same goodness or that frequency, you can put that into the water, into the food you eat. And that's a very, that's something that we can do. And other things that, we could go a little more into the woo-woo, but like in Africa, out in the villages of Africa where there's not a lot of, contact with civilization, they'd have, World Health Organization people would come by to do that to like the children. And then after that was done, the elders would remark that the children could no longer see nature spirits anymore. So
yeah, I've heard that.
Had been cut off from those children. So you have to be really, really important or very careful of what you put in your body, because there may be other consequences. And, the people behind some of this stuff, what do they really know? I mean, they're running things. They might have a certain higher level of esoteric knowledge and are using that esoteric knowledge against you. So if you aren't aware of that, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance may be terminal.
Well, one thing I want to mention on that too is Dr. Jacqueline Hobbs has talked a lot about the science of images, and I think it's incredibly important. It's basically realizing that how impactful just certain things that show up and flash up and we're presented with, how they make you feel, and they create a whole sort of structure and a belief system that goes on, because there's a lot tied into an image. And to be very aware of what you are open to allowing into your field, what you are open to being exposed to. I even find as things change, you really are careful with, and not even careful, it actually makes you feel sick. Yeah. It literally makes you start to feel ill. My stepson sent me a text the other day, and he's 17. He said, "Oh, you got to watch this new series. Go and check this out." And so, it's because we like to have certain things where we can kind of chat about, and that's a big deal for him. So I try to entertain some of that stuff too. And I put it on and watched the first little bit, and it was like level. I mean, most stuff now on any kind of TV stuff or shows, it's, the level of sort of graphic violence and stuff is just too much. Yeah. And this was like a PG kind of 13 type of thing. And it was like, as soon as it came on, I was like, no, off. I'm like, I don't even want that somewhere back there, because I know it's not making things feel good. And if I listen to my body, and if people kind of are like, oh God, but they keep allowing themselves to be exposed to this, they really do get numbed out from it. And again, if you can separate from that kind of stuff for a while, and then challenge yourself with it and see what it feels like. I had a patient that emailed me a while back, and she said she had no media exposure for months. She just took a total break from it. And then she turned it on, and she goes, it felt like it made my stomach feel a little sick, and I felt like they were trying to manipulate me.
Yeah.
She said, that's the feeling. And I said, that's really good, because you cleaned the slate down, got back to sort of a normal, connected back to body intelligence, and then you could tell what was out of vibration. And it literally is, when something feels like that, it is not the same vibration. And when they're not, they're going to clash. Or it's like talking to someone that's at a totally different vibration and you just kind of pass. There's no communicating with them because they just cannot see or understand things from the perspective that you're at. It wraps very much into beliefs and all sorts of things too.
I totally resonate with all that. I haven't had a TV since the 90s. I grew up with a parent who used to do that trick of falling asleep in front of the TV, like on the couch, like that was the nighttime routine. And growing up in that environment, I was like, I will never do that. And the only time I've really been exposed to it is when I've had a boyfriend who was like really into sports or something, but my partner does not. He's not into it, and so we haven't. There is a TV in my house, but it's never on, and we don't pay for cable. So it's really interesting when people are able to unplug and do what you're suggesting, get back to nature, get back in tune with your body, spend more time listening and feeling to the information and energies that are available to us through the earth. We definitely can simmer down. And I think when you make the conscious choice to disconnect from technology, then I think that for me personally, there's been a benefit to my sleep. If I'm on the screen too much and I've been exposed to even my, too much computer work, I have a hard time unplugging and winding down. And I think, getting out in nature, doing some hikes and enjoying some time near water, sleep is easier to access, and, dreams are easier to recall and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation. Ken, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about magnetics. I'm curious, what do you know about the potential of magnetics to support health and wellness?
Well, the first thing that we have to think about is like magnetics are actually just a magnetic field is just as essential for our existence as is air that we breathe. But people may not really understand that. They actually did tests with chicken eggs at various levels of development, and they put them in a chamber where they totally neutralized the magnetic fields. There was no magnetic field inside that chamber, and the eggs that were earlier in development just died, and the ones that were nearly done, they never hatched, and when they opened them up, all the embryos were totally deformed. And so it's just as necessary to have a magnetic field. And also, as you know, the magnetic field of the Earth has been weakening recently, and they actually go back. There's a thing when the rotational pole, when the magnetic pole approaches the rotational pole, the magnetic field drops. And then as the magnetic pole moves away from the rotational pole, it strengthens. And that's, of course, it came really close here recently, the last year or so. And so we have like a much lower magnetic pole than normal. And actually, if you go back in history, because we can actually track where the magnetic pole and we know where the rotational pole was. And we find that there tends to be epidemics and other outbreaks of diseases when the Earth's magnetic field weakens. This is just part of it. And animals, and also in the past when the magnetic field was much stronger, animals were larger and healthier. So there's a direct correlation between the magnetic field strength and health that a person has. And actually, there's various people that can do that. It's like I gave you that magnet for your bed, because right now the Earth's magnetic field is probably 20% what it was a century or two ago, and it's probably like 30% or 40% probably below optimum. So there's things you can do to actually, because when you're out in the environment, and especially driving around a car, doing things like that, you may not have the magnetic field that you need. And so sometimes, like if you have magnetic strengthening in your bed, you can actually make up for your missed magnetic field at nighttime when you sleep. So that's just one thing that you can do to improve, because people just don't understand how important a strong and healthy magnetic field is.
Mm-hmm. Jason, I know you said that you haven't specifically dove into this topic yet in your series with your guests, but I'm curious, what inspired you to want to explore this topic?
One of the guests we've had a few times has been Lee Carroll and Monica Mariani. And Lee Carroll channels information from somebody called Cryon. Cryon's actually spoken several times at the UN in years in the past and stuff. And he's sort of been talking, sort of channeling this information for a long time. And a lot of what he said has been very true and come to pass in different ways. And I find it really interesting. And he's written one of his books, I think his 12th book, was specifically on DNA and what's changing with DNA and all of these different things. So I wanted to have him on the show to talk to him about that. And Cryon is technically what's called like a magnetic master. So there's a lot of stuff around that. But one of the things he actually said and predicted years back was that the magnetic field was going to weaken and it was going to be changing. And what's interesting is from his perspective, he tied it with changes in consciousness, because he said when the magnetics of the planet are higher, it actually keeps us very grounded in more of a physical plane. And as the magnetics start to lighten a little bit, it's why there's this opening that seems right at the moment for people to actually transcend in ways of consciousness that we haven't been able to for a long time, because we have literally been more grounded into the earth. So this is a very interesting concept. And this is kind of what I'm wondering about, because I'm exploring all of this too. This is new information for me, but I find it all very fascinating. And when I see correlations between multiple different areas saying a similar story in different ways, I feel like there's got to be truth there. And so part of these series have been trying to round some of this out to understand the bigger picture. But it does sound very much like from many different indigenous cultures that we are going through a big shift in consciousness, that literally the planet is shifting in consciousness and that people are actually going to be shifting in consciousness. And part of that ties very much with some of the shifts that are going to be taking place in the magnetics of the planet to allow these leaps in consciousness to start to transcend. And so the reason I think we're under this pressure cooker, more or less, that we are, is, the concept of choice has come up over and over again as being incredibly important in our conscious evolution. We can't just wait for something to happen. We have to actually make certain choices that are in alignment with our inner knowing, with our true self. And a lot of times we don't make those choices until we get squeezed hard enough, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, I personally feel like this pressure that everybody is feeling under, that is getting closer and closer and closer, is going to touch every single person. So we're all going to have to make choices. And my wish to everybody is that we very genuinely connect to what is very much true inside of us. And that's might be different for other people. And all I want, and I think that is important at this time, not just for our own evolution, for the conscious evolution of humanity, is that we pay close attention to what genuinely feels right for ourselves, what our truth is, and then act from that place and make choices from that place. And that's it. Knowing how to say a hard no, making different decisions after that. What do I have to do? But not compromising that sort of level of integrity within ourselves. To me, that's where I feel like what we're needing to do. And I feel like that's why this pressure is coming on for everybody, because everybody is going to have to make choices. And to me, it's this pressure that eventually brings out the diamond.
Yes, pressure creates diamonds. Definitely. I couldn't agree with you more. If most people could grasp this concept. If you had a boss and the boss said, you must sleep with me or you're going to get fired. You must do what I'm telling you to do with your body and you'll be fired. And most people would be like, if you didn't like that boss, you'd be like, no, I'm good. I'm out, like do what you have to do. But if that story got out, people would rally around that person and people would clearly know the difference between right and wrong. What we're dealing with right now is no different than that scenario where you have a boss who's dictating you must do something without knowing who you are and what your individual situation is and what you've been through in your life. And also without consideration for the fact that just because you're employed somewhere doesn't mean it's a lifelong contract, doesn't mean that that's your higher purpose. It doesn't mean that that's the work that you're supposed to be doing or what your spirit's even called for. That just happens to be in the moment how you are making some money. So the fact that they're collectively, I think a lot of people understand the difference between right and wrong in this scenario, but a lot of people are just like, no, it's okay. I have a person in my neighborhood who told me, oh, I just think everyone should just quit and just do it. And then they could fly, and then they could go to restaurants, and they could go to sporting events. And I gave this person this scenario. I said, well, hey, I know, you're a big, tall, strong guy. And this probably hasn't happened to you in your career, but if you did have a boss who said, you must sleep with me or I'll fire you, how would you feel about it? And he'd be like, well, that's bullshit. I go, it's the same thing. So, we have to, it's critical for us to stand up to your point about like what's important for our own lives and get clear with our own truth and also have integrity. But at the same time, while that's important for you, it's also important for everyone else, regardless of what side of the aisle they sit on. It's important for us to understand the difference between right and wrong and when there's an overreach and when there's not an overreach. So, and making sure that those boundaries are clearly defined, because once the power is taken away from you, you're never going to get it back. Like it's just not coming back. And so people need to really stop and think through this and slow down. There's nothing wrong with waiting and doing more research. So
no, I know people are feeling pressure on everything, and but I honestly think it's all part of what is happening right now. And I think all that people can do is just honor as much as they can of what genuinely feels right within inside of them. I think that's what we're all being called to do. And I'm not here to tell people what exactly my right is and their right is, but I think we all know inside if we slow down enough to pay attention to it. And then it's really, are we going to act from that place? Because it's easy to make excuses. Everybody thinks, I have to do this or I have to do that. And it's like, we don't have to do anything. It's all a choice. And sometimes we just don't like the choices that we've got. And right now there's lots of uncomfortable choices, but there's still choices, right?
You always have a choice, for sure. Always. You can always say no.
And my general feeling, and I know in my life, is even when we've had to make some of these hard choices, but if they are connected to my integrity and to my inner knowing, it opens up into something else. It just always does. It moves into something more expansive than something contracted. If you think about things in these ways that we're talking about it in fields of consciousness, if I stay in a higher state of consciousness, I know I will have more options than if I go into a smaller state of consciousness. That is the way quantum physics works. One other thing to your point too around that is one of the things that the Goldmans talked about that are the sound healers. He said something that was really important. He talked about how we are all unique vibrational beings. This is very true. And he said in his episodes, in his workshops, he'll often say, how many people are allergic to penicillin? I said anywhere between 5 to 20% of the group usually raises their hand. He's like, so for some of you, penicillin may be a vibrational match and be beneficial at a certain time. For some of you, penicillin is absolutely not a vibrational match and could actually be very dangerous. That's the same thing for everything. A fundamental principle, I should say, that used to be a part of naturopathic medicine, because it doesn't seem to be at the moment, is individualized treatment. You honor every single individual, and you recognize that every single person needs to be treated individually, because no one specific thing works for everybody. And not only does not only one specific treatment work for everybody, it also will not work very well for a number, and it can actually be incredibly dangerous for another percentage of the population. And that's just a truth. And like the Goldman said the same thing, just said it from a vibrational point of perspective, we are all unique. So he said the idea of having any one tone that affects everybody beneficially will never be the case, because we all resonate something slightly different.
So true. Ken, any additional thoughts on what Jason's just said?
Oh, no, I think individualized treatment, or, because everyone is different and they have, different pathways. I think a lot of it's almost like a initiation process into another level, and that people are going to, and it's and we come to a time where you really can't stay on the fence. You've got to go one side or the other. The middle ground is disappearing. So, and there's consequences on both whatever choice you make in that case. But you need to just think about it and decide which pathway you want to be on. Yeah,
this has been a really awesome conversation. Jason, if if our listeners want to explore more of these topics with you, please share with them how they can connect with you and dial in and sign up for notifications for the Inspire Health podcast.
Yeah, for the most part, just go check out inspirehealthpodcast.com.
Okay.
And you'll go to the website. You can check all the different links. They can go to our YouTube channel as well. We run the podcast on all the major platforms, so use links to all of that stuff. And yeah, right now we are about a third of the way into the series on energy, frequency, vibration, and magnetics, the next era of healthcare. And it's been fascinating. Every talk we have had, it feels like we've been connecting with like long lost friends. It's been really phenomenal, and I've made real heartfelt connections with every one of these guests so far. And all on a very similar idea of just wanting to vision for the planet. And I feel like these are all really wonderful people that are sharing their wise words. So when you go and check them out, put your notepad down and make some different notes. One last thing that I think is really important to mention is in our interview with RJ Spina, and RJ healed himself from chest down paralysis literally through his process of called ascending the frequencies. And there's a lot to that interview. That interview had so many brilliant pieces to it. But one thing that I think was really important is he said, the DNA is designed to receive information from our true self, or that source connection, which is truth. And when we are taking information from the egoic self, which is mostly what we do, that's our patterns, our conditioning, our justifications, our belief systems that get in the way, then it is always going to be creating damage at that level. So very, very important to be very clear with where we are receiving information, and then to put that information into action. We have to then live from that place. And when we're doing that, we actually create very little damage to the body. It's actually even very difficult to age. But that's what turns on our innate healing abilities. When we are taking information from our egoic self, we are basically setting up the process of constant damage to DNA. He said the main deterrent that gets in the way is the thinking mind. So he said, when we are thinking that we think because we are stuck in low levels of frequency. He said it's like being in a maze. And when you are in a low level of frequency, you have to think your way out of the maze. When you're in higher states of frequency, it's like you get lifted above the maze and you can just see the whole thing and go, oh, that's the way out. And you just know it. So these are the information that is available to us, but are often not attainable because we are not in those states of consciousness or those frequencies to be able to receive them. And if we can, there's this whole world of information and knowing just waiting. So let's try to do less and less thinking. And this is why, again, I said, like we talked about, get away from being programmed, get away from, get back to nature, slow things down. Dr. Amma Goswami said, do. He says, you do stuff, then you be. Be is like that state of being. You slow things down, you meditate, you calm down, you get into nature, you bring everything down. That's when then we receive those aha moments, those deep states of intuition. When we are connected to states of meaning and purpose, we naturally turn on those intuitive abilities. They're there all the time. That's the stuff that we want to try to be finding. Get out of here more, get back into here more.
I just want to say amen to all that. That's awesome. Jason, Ken, I'm so grateful to both of you for the work that you're doing on the planet. Thank you both for being here with us today and sharing some of your words of wisdom. And for all of our listeners, we will put all the links below to the ways that you can connect with Dr. Jason Loken and the Inspire Health podcast. And we'll add links for his books as well, so you guys can go out and check those out. Thank you so much both for your time today, and wishing you both a wonderful rest of your day. And we will speak with you soon. Thanks.
Thanks very much, guys. My pleasure.